Morning everyone, welcome in my online classroom. I am Mohammad Sohiduzzaman, Associate Professor and Chairman Tourism and Hospitality Management, Mohammedpur Kendriya College, Dhaka. First of all, I would like to thank our Honorable Principal, Professor Sir Jafar Ali Sir gives his permission and advices to conduct the online classes. Students, I hope you all are well. Because of the COVID-19 breakout in the pandemic situation of the world, we are bound to stay at home. We are staying at home, but it does not mean we can sit idle. We have to work for our next days. Today, I will take your online class. I hope you all will give attention to my online class. I will take class on strategic management, BBA professional, 4th year 7th semester, and the chapter name strategic implementation, chapter 6. The topic is strategy implementation. Now the question is being discussed below. What is strategy implementation? In the first question, and the second question, strategy implementation process, and third question, importance of strategy implementation, and the fourth question, key elements of business strategic implementation, and the last question, McKinsey's 7S framework. So the student commanders have much more skill and scope from those side. If you look out in practical side, then you have studied theoretical side. Practical side, that means FBCCI, DCCI, export, import, trade and commerce, BGME, BKME, foreign direct investment, and etc. etc. And theoretical side, your own books or reference books. So we need to learn commercial studies. Now the first question is, what is strategy implementation? Strategy implementation is the process that turns strategies and plan into action in order to accomplish strategic objectives. And the Google define strategic implementation is the activities within a workplace or organization designed to manage the activities associated with the delivery of a strategic plan. So, strategy implementation can be defined as a process through which a chosen strategy is put into action. And the scholars defines strategy implementation is the activity performed according to a plan in order to achieve an overall goal. So, strategy is a roadmap of an organization. Strategy is a well-defined roadmap. It defines the overall mission, vision, and direction of an organization. The objectives of strategy is to maximize an organization's strength and to minimize the strength of the competitors. So, strategy implementation, properly guiding and handling an activity performed according to a plan in order to achieve an overall goals. Strategic implementation is a key ingredient of modern business. Once an organization creates a strategy to meet its goals, implementation to the next step for successful execution. Finally, we can say that the implementation of policies and strategies is concerned with the design and management of system to achieve the best integration of people, structure, process, and resources in reaching organizational purpose. And the next question, McKinsey 7S framework. This is the important question in this chapter. McKinsey 7S program. McKinsey 7S framework. And the first one, strategy. And the second point, structure. And the third point, system. And the fourth point, skill. And the fifth point, style. And the sixth point, staff. And the last point, shared values. This is the 7S framework of McKinsey: strategy, structure, system, skill, style, step, and shared values. And the first one, strategy. Strategy is a well-defined roadmap of an organization. It defines the overall mission, vision, and direction of an organization. The objectives of a strategy is to maximize an organization's strength and to minimize the strength of the competitors. So, strategy is what needs to be implemented. And the second point, structure. So, structure, the chain of command. And the second point, or system, the tools used to perform tasks and complete process. That is a system. A system is an interrelated and interdependent interaction of elements. And the fourth, skill, what employees can do. That skills is important factors of the development of organizational activities. Style, how the leaders lead and follow the style. Participating, autocratic, democratic, laissez-faire, and different kinds of style, and leader follows in the properly style and the maintains the organizational activities. In the democratic and participating is the important style of the organizational activities and development of organizational goal to achieve an overall goal. Staff, that means the employees. This is the staff of an organization. And the last point, share values. The core values expected through the corporate culture, that is share values to the culture of corporate culture, internal and external culture development of the organization, and achieve an overall goal. That is 7S of McKinsey's framework, and this is the first 3S, strategy, structure and system, that is invisible framework, and the last 4S, skill, style, staff and share values, that is invisible framework. In order to ensure smooth implementation each of these categories, that is McKinsey's 7S framework. And the next question, strategy implementation process. That is the important strategy implementation process, and this process developing in the organizational activities and goals. So strategy implementation process, there are 5 steps in this process. In the first process, evaluation and communication of the strategic plan. Evaluation and communication of strategic plan. And the sub point, the strategies with the initiatives, with the initiatives. And the second sub point, align budget to the annual goals and objectives. Budget to the annual goals and objectives. Goals and objectives. Communication with clarify the goals and objectives. Communication and clarify the goals, objectives and strategies of objectives and strategies to all members of the organization. That is the first process, evaluation and communication of strategic plan. And the first sub point, align the strategies with the initiatives, align the budgeting to the annual goals and objectives, communication with clarify the goals, objectives and strategies to all members of the organization. And the second point, the important process, development of an implementation structure. Of an important structure. Important structure. And the third point, development of implementation. Of implementation. Development of implementation. Support policy and programs. Support policy and program. And the sub point, establish a performance tracking and monitoring system. Establish a performance tracking and monitoring system. Tracking and monitoring system. And the second sub point, establish a performance management system. Performance management system. And the last sub point, establish an information and feedback system. Information and feedback system. And feedback system. This is the third sub point. That means establish a performance tracking and monitoring system, establish a performance management system, establish an information feedback system. And the fourth point, budgeting and allocation of resources. Budgeting and allocation resources. And the last point, discharge of functions and activities. Function and activities. This is the important process of strategic implementation. And the first point, evaluation and communication of strategic plan. And the sub point, align the strategic with the initiatives and the budget to the annual goals and objectives. And the third sub point, communication and clarify the goals, objectives and strategic of the all members of an organization. Development of an important structure. And the third point, development of implementation support policy and program. That is the sub point, establish a performance tracking and monitoring system, establish a performance management system, establish an information feedback system. And the fourth point, budgeting and allocation resources. And the last point, discharge of functions and activities. That is the important process or steps of strategic implementation. Now the process is discussed below. And the first point, evaluation and communication of the strategic plan. That is important process of strategic implementation process or steps. The strategic plan which was developed during the strategy formulation stage will be distributed for implementation. However, there is still a need to evaluate the plan, especially with respect to the initiative, budget and performance. First things, check that the strategies on the plan and following the same path leading to the mission and strategic goals of the organization. And the financial assessment conducted prior will provide an insight on budgetary issue. Position in the organization hierarchy, everyone must know and understand the goals and objectives of the organization. And the second point or second steps by process, development of an important structure. Establish a linking or coordination mechanism between and among the various departments and their respective division and units. Formulate the work plans and procedures to be followed in implementation of the tactics in the strategies. Determining the key managerial tasks and responsibilities to be performed and the qualifications required to the person who will perform them. Determine the key operational tasks and responsibility to the perform and the qualifications required to the person who will perform them. Assign the tasks of the appropriate departments of the organization and the successfully organizational activities, then the targeting and achievement goals. And the next process, development of implementation, support policy and program. This will be the basis of evaluating the progress of the implementation of strategies, monitoring the rate of accomplishment of result, or if there were accomplishment at all. Establishment of performance management system. In this context, we have to establish a performance management system. Establish an information and feedback system. Feedback and result to be used for strategy evaluation later on. Communicate these policies and programs to be members of the organization. That is the development of implementation, support and policy and programs. And the next point, budgeting and allocation resource. It is now time to implement with the tools of other capabilities to the perform their tasks and functions. Allocate the resource to the various departments depending on the result of financial assessment as to their budgetary requirement. Disburse the necessary resource to the department and make sure everything is properly and accurately documented. Maintain a system of checks and balance to monitor whether the department are operating within their budgetary limits. So we need to commercial studies for the students of BBA professional. And the next point or last point, research of function and activities. It is continuous engagement of personnel by providing training and reorientations. Enforce the applicable control measures in the performance of the task. Evaluate performance at every level and identify performance gaps, if any, to enable adjusting and corrective action. That is the process or implementation of strategy, and the first steps or process, evaluating and communication of strategic plan, and the second point, development of an important structure, and the third point, development of implementation support policy and program, and the fourth point, budgeting and allocation resource, and the last point, research of function and activities. Key elements of business strategic implementation. And the first point is organization, and the second point, planning, third point, resource, fourth, communication, and fifth and the last point, monitoring. This is the key elements of business strategic implementation. And the first one, organization. Organization is the process of establishing authority and responsibility relationship among the members of the enterprise. Organization is the process of identifying and grouping the work to be performed, defining and delegating responsibility and authority, and establishing relationship for the purpose. For a successful strategy implementation, we have to make sure our strategy matching the types of organization and our business uses. Employees need an organizational structure and delegates authority. That is important to the development of organizational goals. And the next point, planning. Planning is the most basis or primary functions. Planning involves determining the objectives and selecting a course of action to achieve them. It implies looking ahead and deciding in advance what is to be done, when and where is to be done, how and by whom it is to be done. That is a projected course of action. So planning is the implementing our strategy requires a series of activities that result in our company meeting our target and achieving our overall goals and objectives. And the next key elements of business statistics implementation: resource. When we have completed our implementation plan, we can start assigning employees to the individual tasks. Some tasks requires additional resource such as computer software, promotional materials and money to cover special expense. That is the important key elements of business statistics. And the next point, communication. Online collaboration tools such as those fund and office productivity software can help foster a comparative working relationship among team members in one party to another party, one institution to another institutional support and effort and properly communicate, then the business strategy closely relationship nice and fine the achieving and targeting the goal and earning profit in the sometimes. That is, communication is important. Business statistics and strategical implementing on the side by side the business activities nicely. And the next point, monitoring. While our team is working to implement the strategy, our focus is shift from initiative to monitoring. We have to make sure work is on track and scheduled according to the planning documentation. So monitoring is the important or effective the communication or business strategy implementation. Strategy is a plan for action designed to achieve a specific goal. So strategy is the process that turns and plans into action in order to accomplish strategic objectives. So this is the important key elements of business statistics or business statistics implementing in the side by side. The key elements is adopting in a company or organization, that is organization, planning, resource, communication and monitoring. At the end of my class, enjoy it. We pray for everything Almighty. I am requesting you, stay at home and be safe.